Now if you look to the front of this train, you'll see a large green machine up there with the number 2 on it. And that is a genuine steam locomotive. In fact, it's a very special steam locomotive. That is the oldest operating Heisler in the entire world. Heislers are special locomotives also because they sacrifice speed for extreme amounts of torque. They do this with gearing. There's 2 cylinders on that locomotive. They're arranged in a V. They drive a crankshaft that runs down the center underneath the locomotive. That crankshaft has sliding square shafts and universal joints allowed to extend and bend, allowing it to transmit that power from those cylinders to every single wheel underneath this locomotive's weight. It's basically an all-wheel drive steam engine. That engine carries the number 2 on it because it was the second locomotive acquired here at Roaring Camp. Before that engine came to Roaring Camp, it worked up in Tuolumne, California on the West Side Lumber Company. That's why it's called the Tuolumne. It's good luck to name the locomotive after where you got it from. That locomotive was built in 1899 and has been in service ever since. It was never taken out of service, except for minor repairs here and there. She was never stuffed and mounted, as we like to say about steam engines, where they're just put on display in some park for 50 years, rusting away. That locomotive has been continuously operating since 1899. Try saying that about your car. When that locomotive was first built, it was originally a wood-burning steam locomotive. So the firemen had a very difficult job of shoving chunks of wood into that locomotive's firebox all day long to keep that fire burning at a nice 2,700 degrees to boil the water in the boiler to make steam pressure. Somewhere around the 1900s, that locomotive was converted to burn oil. Oil is a lot cleaner than burning wood. California's always had incredibly strict air pollution laws, even since the 1900s, like smog control for steam engines. Now that locomotive burns recycled crankcase oil. So when you guys do oil changes on your car, well, that old oil gets collected up. Like I was saying, when you guys do oil changes on your cars, that old oil gets collected up, then refined down till it has no lubricational qualities, and sent to places like this that have steam engines that need to be fired. So, thank you for doing regularly scheduled maintenance on your vehicle. Can you tell I used to be a service technician? I sure wasn't an English major. You're about to find that out too. That noise you just heard coming from the steam engine, by the way, that's called a pop valve. That pop valve pops off whenever the steam pressure in the boiler gets just a little too high. It drains off a few pounds just to get it right back to normal. Now we're just about to enter a location on this railroad known as Big trees. The reason why we call this area Big Trees is pretty obvious if you're paying attention. Some of the largest trees in this entire valley are in this location. Scientifically, these trees are known as Sequoia sempervirens, which in Latin roughly translates in English to the always living redwood tree. Of course, we don't know them as the coastal redwood. These trees as the coastal redwoods though. And they're incredibly tall. In fact, the tallest tree recorded to this day is a coastal redwood tree just like the ones around us, known as the Hyperion Giant, that measures 382.3 feet tall. Let me tell you, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty and the pedestal it's sitting on. That makes this railroad so special, besides the fact that we operate steam engines every day, which is, well, incredibly special in itself, is the fact that this is a narrow gauge railroad. So the train tracks that we're rolling on right now are a lot narrower than the modern American standard gauge of 4 feet 8.5 inches, like Amtrak, Caltrain, and Union Pacific. This magic number of 4 feet 8.5 inches actually comes from the imprints left in the ground by the Roman chariots. The Romans figured out that a wheelbase of 4 feet 8.5 inches is just about wide enough for 2 horses to stand within the wheelbase while pulling a cart. Back when they were first designing railroads, well, they were still using horses, so it just made sense. But later, when steam engines became more popular, so did narrow gauge railroading. For instance, the tracks we're rolling on right now are only 3 feet apart from each other, which has one major advantage to standard gauge railroading. This advantage is, it's cheaper, way cheaper. You don't have to clear as much land to put your railroad down, so the train tracks are thinner. The equipment's also smaller, so you can have tighter turns. You can also get specialized equipment like that all-wheel drive Heisler locomotive, designed to climb right up the side of a mountain. So you can have a steeper railroad too. We're about to go a bit backwards with the oldest operating Heisler in the world, making Roaring Camp one of the most backwards railroads you'll ever ride. So please remain seated because we'll get on. Sometimes we don't always make it up this hill in one shot. Sometimes we'll start slipping really bad. You gotta work down to the bottom, put a little more sand on the rail for traction. Try again. Cross your fingers, ladies and gentlemen. We're slowing down. I've seen 4 attempts personally to make it up this hill. Look back at that locomotive right now, you'll hear and see one of the hardest working steam locomotives in the entire country. Hear that thing? It's working real hard back there. Dumping sand. We really push these locomotives past their limits every single day here. When you're working working a locomotive that hard, you're using up a lot of water out of the boiler. So the fireman is watching his water level just drop like a stone. To counter this, he has to inject more water into the boiler from the tender, which is cold. And what happens when you put a shot of cold water into a pot of boiling water? It stops it from boiling for a moment. To counter this, because that likes to bring the boiler pressure down, the fireman has to crank the fire up way harder than usual to instantly boil that water, and he's injecting into the boiler, that cold water. Because of this, the fire is burning at about 3,500 degrees. The boiler itself is radiating heat at about 700 degrees at this moment. And the ambient temperature inside the shaft can range anywhere from 170 to 230 when you're working it this hard. When around that 8.5% grade, it's not working as hard as this. So it's a little bit cooler in there. Man, Ray's really showing off right now. I haven't heard that locomotive slip once. It's chugging really slow, but that's because she's gripping the rail. I have not heard it slip once coming up this hill, and that is incredibly tough to do. Can you guys tell how hard it is to make it up this hill? You feel the locomotive pulsing like this? She's working incredibly hard right now. It's kind of crazy that we pushed the oldest operating Heisler in the world like this. The only reason why we do that is because we can actually repair it in our shops. We do most of our maintenance on property in that red building with the rusty roof that you probably drove right by when you parked in our parking lot. That's the engine house.
On that one, it's called a switchback. Switchback, correct. You had to do a crisscross to get that bridge back there.
Wow, we just made it up to Hallelujah Junction in one try. That was tough. And I didn't even hear that locomotive slip once. It was crawling up that hill. Let's give those poor sweaty gentlemen up there in the cab a nice round of applause. They're working real hard for you right now. They appreciate it too, they just don't have a microphone like me. But while we're up here at Hallelujah Junction, take a look on the right-hand side of the train, and you'll see a little cliff here with a bunch of sand. Cliff going up. Up, yeah, there you go. And what you're looking at is a 3-million-year-old beach. Beachfront property right here at the top of the hill. Makes sense, right? Well, the water used to be a lot higher. The only reason why we know this used to be a beach here is because when they were digging out the switchback in '76, they found all sorts of fossils right here. Found shark's teeth and mollusk shells and our pterodon skeleton. Attractive beachfront property. Look at all that poison out. Hate that stuff.
That means, guys, times the ocean is all the way up here. This part was underwater.
Now, if you're sitting on the left-hand side of this train, you may want to look off that hillside, because if you do, you're going to have a pretty good overview of the whole switchback system, and to keep looking at the burnout trestles. And if you're sitting on the right-hand side of this train, just sit tight, don't worry, I'll point this stuff out to you guys too on the way down. Now this piece of property property is incredibly special because way back in 1867, a gentleman by the name of Joseph Welch bought this piece of property with the intent on logging it. He could chop down every single tree out here and make a huge profit. But before he did, he wanted to show his wife how beautiful these trees really were. So he sent her a letter she received in San Francisco, upon which he hopped on a buggy and embarked on a 3-day journey to here from San Francisco. Now as we get back down here into Spring Canyon, take a look underneath these trestles and you'll see a whole bunch of cute little baby redwood trees that are direct results from that 1976 trestle fire. You'll also see this huge redwood tree that I'm passing out at the end of the train. If you look at the other side of it, you'll see it's hollow. The reason why that tree's hollow is because redwood trees are fire resistant, not fireproof. And if the fire dwells at the base of one long enough, it can work its way through the bark to the heartwood. It'll catch the heartwood on fire, and eventually that'll burn out from the center of the tree, hollowing it out. Now luckily, redwood trees have adapted to overcome this. One of the ways they do it, or actually the way they do it, is the bark forms incredibly thick scar tissue. Also forms new heartwood to support the tree now that it doesn't have a center. This makes the base of the redwood tree a lot thicker than the rest of it. So if you ever see a redwood tree that has a tapered base on it, you already know 2 things about that tree. You know, 1, it's been in an extreme fire, and 2, it's hollow. In fact, that redwood tree is so hollow, it's now on the right-hand side of the locomotive, that whenever we're up here working on the train tracks, and I hear the boss lady's coming up, we can all hide within that tree. And that's exactly what we do. Pop out and scare the boss lady when she's right on top of us. She loves it. Hasn't caught on yet either. I don't know how.
Then they just fixed it. Yeah, change the split. The engineer just got out. It's like perfect.
Getting ready to go.
I should know the system is best side.
Down.
When you get to the bottom, you'll find out.
Like that.
Got a hard over there, that big swamp. And when we got it, we saw it. We were on the other side, remember? Let's go. What does it do? Right? Now you gotta work out. How do you think they float that lake? You got 2 waters in that lake. We call it grabbing lakes when we're doing this. Let's got it. Okay. Look to the front. Look to the front.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's how we do it right there. The cleanest ducks and turtles in all the country. That's right, we steam clean our ducks and turtles here, and they love it until they get a little too close and then become the special at the restaurant. And with that parting piece of information on behalf of our engineer Ray on the whistle, your fireman Doug on the bell, and your conductor Charlie on the squeaky voice, I'd like to thank you all for coming on down and supporting this railroad. Without your help and support, we would not be able to keep these pieces of history rolling. So thank you for coming on down and riding the Redwood Forest Steam Train. As we roll into the depot here, make sure the masks are on, and please remain seated until we come to a full and complete stop. We might move back and forth a couple times because our engineer has to line up that locomotive perfectly with the water tower to take on water. So we might move back and forth a few times. So please do not stand until you hear one short whistle blast. Once you hear that one short whistle blast, we're going to exit these rail cars from the rear platforms only. So look around your rail car right now, see where your group's seated. If you're seated on the end of the rail car that's away from the locomotive towards the rear of the train, you're going to get off your rail car first, followed by the next group up the rail car from you. So we're only exiting off the rear platforms of this train. Just wait for that whistle though.
Back up a little bit.